Hello, sparkly beings. My name is Avery, and I help folks who are passionate about liberation and justice to find themselves and their roles in an emerging future. And I am here today with you to do a little wrap up of both March and April, because we did skip March. And I'm going to try to be quicker than usual. I have realized that possibly no one cares about the personal update stuff, and even if you do, you might like it to be a little shorter. So you can let me know in the comments if that's true. But we're still going to do a little bit of update, and I will show you some of the decks that I have received and been working with, talk about books, talk about TV shows, etc. So we can have a fun little update. As always, just a reminder that the very best way to receive content from me for free is to click on the newsletter link below. I would love to have you in that container. We have a lot of exclusive content that you can't find anywhere else. And if you do find the stuff that I do supportive, I would love for you to consider joining the Patreon. I create a lot of free content, which I love doing, and I love serving people. And if you do receive benefit and are able to do so, I'd love it if you kick a little support my way to help keep this sustainable. All right, let's get on with it. So I'm going to talk about March and April together. I'm not really going to divide it out. But just quickly to go through kind of some of the themes that I've been experiencing. So one is that, oh my God, the moon cycles, the astrology, the whatever, has been a lot of up and down lately. I don't know if anybody else is going through this. I talked about this a little bit in my quarterly update that I do for my sustaining level supporters, but it's just, yeah, it's really been like rolling with it, being a student of the universe and the way things are up and down, and just like allowing that to be true. Lots of stuff going on in my personal life, but also just like a lot of kind of waves of going from like uncertainty to clarity to wait, no, I'm not sure again around my business. And so I think that's something that is very natural and very normal for, you know, folks who are entrepreneurs, and especially in the first year to maybe even 3 years of your business. So if you're in the same place, I'm with you, I got you. That is just what it is. But, you know, I've really been, I think, discovering kind of the layers of what it really means to trust yourself, because self-trust has been such a key theme of really my whole life journey and my healing journey and my career path and everything. And, you know, I always think I'm getting close to it, and then there's more to go, because there is no it, right? There's no like final destination. It's just like deeper and deeper. So, you know, I've really been re-embracing my kind of nerdery and multi-passionateness, and absorbing some of the advice I receive about showing up in public and creating a brand and all of that. But then also at the same time, I think it's often like when folks talk about this, there's kind of a, either you're, you know, in the kind of like business advice and it's like niche down, niche down, niche down, like you got to do it, everyone's got to do it on the one hand, or you'll hear people kind of like, nope, I'm multi-passionate, I am all over the place, and that's my brand, right? And I think I probably lean more towards that side, and that as much as I've been trying to learn the brand development, I realized that like it is a valid container. You know, the tagline I use, queer and magical AF, right? Like I always have a very clear idea that everything I do is at this intersection between the kind of mindful, intuitive, spiritual, tarot and astrology specifically as tools, but like that side of things, you know, enoughness work, intuition, unlearning all these like harmful systems that keep us from that. It's the intersection, and maybe the unlearning is actually the bridge between that, and then on the other hand, kind of justice and being marginalized and being anti-capitalist and, you know, all of that, right? That intersection, and that there's kind of a related piece, I don't know where it goes, that one of the ways in which I am kind of an outsider is neurodivergence, and some of the kind of like systems thinking and the structural thinking that I have may lead folks to feel uncomfortable or unsure about their place in the spiritual side of things, or even feel like that is not something that matters or is accessible to them. And so that's always been really clear, but I think what's within it, you know, I've been trying to really like plan and see the future and build an arc, you know, and build a methodology and build something really big. And I've just realized that the way I am is not that, right? It's always, you know, I'm much clearer as a person. You may have noticed on this channel when I get narrow and specific about something. I hop around between topics, but they're always in this big umbrella. And so, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about developing the brand as an umbrella and the meanness of it as part of the brand, and then having permission for the fact that, you know, the lack of like a really obvious, for example, offer flow where one thing leads to another, maybe is okay, and maybe I can build a sustainable business that way. But it's been a lot of waves with that, and part of that is just like learning self-trust, learning being able to see and identify where my predictions about how other people will think show up, and where that doesn't serve, and the ways in which a lot of business techniques, and especially things like who is my ideal client, those kinds of exercises, involve sort of trying to predict, and knowing that I'm not good at that, in part because of my neurodivergence, that I'm really not good at predicting or even understanding how other people think and perceive. But that if I'm following the path of what lights me up, and I'm following the path of what spirit encourages me to create, then that will come through. And it's just really interesting because it's like, you know, as much as I talk about intuition, as much as I think about practicing intuition, it's building in those check-ins. It's building that habit of always, like, no exception. Like, if we're about to make a decision, let's check in and see where we're intuitively called and not be afraid of the answer. And because fear is so internalized, right? I wouldn't punish myself for feeling it, but it's something to be really aware of, you know? So that's been a really big theme. I've also just like, I had a month where in March I got to go see, some of you may know Catherine, who used to have a channel on this platform on TarotTube, and I got to go see Catherine and Buka, my hippo, technically a dog, not a dog, and that was so good. That was so healing and so lovely, both of them. Catherine and Buka are equal levels here. We don't favor humans on this channel. All creatures are awesome. So that was really good and really beautiful. I won't disclose the exact location, but just to say that we were hanging out in a really beautiful place, and being around water and being around trees is just, it's so healing. I think as I'm going through some of these cycles, like, I'm also sort of figuring out things about my relationship with community and my relationship with time. I've been sort of in and out of and figuring out which communities, both private and public, relationship with social media. As you may have noticed or may not have noticed, I left Instagram, and at some point I'll do a video about that, about social media, and you know, I keep trying to walk this line between, you know, talking about things as a business owner, since I'm not specifically geared towards other business owners, and not, but you know, I think it can be especially scary to leave Instagram, leave Facebook, if you do rely on marketing of some kind to make money. But I just decided I'm going to do this differently, and there are a lot of great examples of people who've done that, that were supportive and helpful, but it was still super scary. And I'd invested so much, I think, of my time into building out content and posting on Instagram. I'm sure some of you are here because you first saw me on Instagram, and in some ways it's a great way to find folks who are interested in these kinds of topics, and also it is just not supportive to my energy at all. The algorithm itself was kind of like weirdly gaslighting me in certain ways, like my relationship with the company of like trying to get in touch with their support. Of course, there's a lot of ethical things about Meta as a company, and you know, just the pile-on of all of those things, the way in which like Instagram has become almost like it feels sometimes like at least the parts I'm on feels like an internal, like it's everyone advertising their offers to each other, and like that's great. And I actually put a lot of, I try to invest a lot in other, especially BIPOC, in other businesses who are doing stuff like I'm doing and doing healing work, because I think it's really important. But you can't spend money if you don't have any. And so the kind of like cycle of that, the loop of that, it's just like, oh, I realized like a lot of the amazing people on Instagram, and this is a good way to check your own kind of social media feed, is like, are you following people because you like the person, but their content isn't serving you? It can feel kind of hard or scary or weird to like unfollow or, I like Twitter because you can mute, and it's nice to be able to keep that, like, if I need to reach out kind of thing. But I just decided that it wasn't, that benefit of like being able to DM was not enough to keep an Instagram account. So I did that, left Instagram. I am on Twitter for now at Queer Magical. There's been a lot of, around Twitter and whether it's getting bought and all that. So we'll see where that goes. But, just like keeping my email newsletter as my main platform is really serving me, because I'm writing more, and which is what I am good at, right, is writing, and doing less of trying to like box into the way social media works. I'm also in a few different like private communities as well, and I think one of the things that I've noticed about my experience in neurodivergence is that sometimes like I can feel isolated and then struggle to evaluate where that's coming from, or struggle to evaluate what I'm actually looking for, and like what different platforms, communities, whatever, actually do for me. And so just like thinking about that has been useful. But also another thing I've been dealing with is overanalyzing. So it's like thinking, but also just feeling into that, like what feels good. What feels like it's generating the kind of community that I want, and what doesn't. And also giving permission to myself that like contribution or being in community doesn't look the same for everyone. And one thing I've noticed in the way people are talking about community, which is a big topic, right, with a lot of people figuring out their relationship with social media, etc. But I've realized that there can be this kind of thread of like, especially in spiritual communities, that are really boundary and really trying to protect those boundaries, which is great, which is totally understandable, of kind of being like, this is not the place to find community. This is not like, you need to dig into your own local community. And I think I struggle with that because in some ways, I know there's probably an extent to which local community is more accessible to me than I realize. Or if I had, the more I can cultivate acceptance around, like, my community doesn't have to share identity, doesn't have to be X way. And also, I know that I have real challenges around communication from neurodivergence. I know that I have real challenges around social interaction and capacity because of disability. I also know that being trans and experiencing gender dysphoria when I'm not seen and understood as such is violent to me, is harmful to me. And so it's trying to find the balance of like, what level of bar do I have, or like how many spoons do I have to kind of try to socialize and figure it out. Making friends when you're 37 is kind of hard. And then there's COVID. And so like my household's a lot more locked down than most people still. We are not really like, we keep talking about maybe starting to open up to having like a few indoor gatherings, but we haven't really done it yet. And so, that just adds another layer, especially as things open up more generally. Having to explain that, or having to find other people who are at the same level can be difficult in general. So that's showing up. I think also, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about this period of everything being online, and then everyone who's online saying that online is not where you make relationships, so go offline, and then not being able to go offline. Like, one of the gifts of it is it's definitely given a lot of space to think about needs and social needs and intimacy, and like what different kinds of intimacy look like, and like what I have and what's missing, without reducing that down to labels in terms of like how many romantic relationships versus friendships versus family. Like, those words to me are very meldy because I'm a relationship anarchist and I don't really think in those terms clearly. And so even identifying things like, what do I get at? Like, what is romance? Please give me a definition. If you think you have a clear definition of what romance is, romance or romantic attraction or romantic intimacy, any of those, right? If you think you know, without reference to, so this is to be clear, if you say sex plus friendship, like, try to not do that. So like, let's assume that someone is not sexually intimate. What's the difference between romance and friendship? Please let me know below what your take is, because this is really hard to figure. Try it, think about it, tell me if you have any thoughts. Maybe I'm just too polyamorous for this. And then, yeah, I mentioned my relationship with time too. I mean, I think I kind of touched on that some, but just like balancing intuition and planning and being really intuitively led, but also acknowledging that I have a need for structure has been an ongoing challenge. Just throw it out there. Another thing I've noticed has been happening a lot, especially in the last month, is I feel like this like lover's year, it's a lover's card year. And part of the lover's card, I think, is interactions with others and what they show us about ourselves. And part of that is comparison and how we compare with others and see, you know, maybe admire what others are doing or are jealous or what have you. And that, like, I made it through a big layer of that even before we were in this year. But I'm noticing an interesting shift where it used to be that if someone did something, put something out in the world that was an idea I'd had, and especially if it was like a big idea that I thought might be really core to what I do, or that I had this imagination of what would happen, so like predicting the future, right, which we noted I'm bad at, predicting how others will react. But if I'm like, wow, this is really good, and then someone else does something similar or pretty much the same, and it takes off, right? It used to be that I would just be like, well, fuck, right? Like, ugh, like, great, preempted. And I think there are a couple ways you can think about that, right? One is that, no, you're not preempted. More than one person can do something. And even if it doesn't seem like there's a market for it, maybe there is. And also, like, the way you do it uniquely might be, you know, appealing to people who weren't drawn to the other thing. And yet knowing all that, right, is still difficult. But I have noticed that recently there's been a lot of things, like one after the other, where somebody's been like, oh, have you seen this? And I'm like, it's literally the exact same name and the exact same format of a thing I was going to do. And I'm pulled less off course by it, the more experience I have with it, but also I'm embodying more the idea that when someone else does something, it's a fucking gift because it means it's out there in the universe and I didn't have to do it. And I say have to because I would have joyfully done it, but like, I have so many ideas, so many possible things I could be doing that honestly, it's not so bad, right? Somebody else did the thing. I'm like, great, right? Because if the real goal, and this isn't to judge myself, right? But like, if the real goal is getting that thing out into the world and serving people with that thing, then good, it exists. And that's not an easy thing at first, I think, to like just say that to yourself. It may not be as embodied, but I think because I've also been going through just like looking at all my ideas and realizing how many there are and realizing, you know, how do you pick? That I see it as a gift to myself. That's like, great, I checked that one off. That's probably not needed, at least for another 5 years or so, you know. So I'm really happy about that. I'm really happy about moving into that energy. And I think that that's also something you might consider, especially if you get a lot of ideas, that they may not all be for you, and that's okay. Maybe some magic happened in having the idea. Maybe the universe connected you with that person, you know? Could happen. It was interesting today, I actually pulled Seven of Cups as something to focus on. And I was like, oh, we're still good with it. Okay, great, right? Seven of Cups is a tarot card that is very, like all the possibilities, and not necessarily the ones you're meant to do, but I think, you know, I've been getting a lot of cards that are like, no, keep doing it, it's fine, you know, just do it. So that's what we're doing. Yeah, I have been having a lot of joy in working with a couple of people that I'm bartering with, which has been really nurturing and good, and given me a chance to explore the way I work one-on-one in a container that is like slightly different, because it's somebody it's people I already know, and it's a barter, and because I know they're also doing the same thing, right? So that's been really fulfilling. What else? I've been pulling the Page of Cups over and over, and this has been happening for probably 8 months now. Like, what am I missing? Well, I sort of know what I'm missing. You know, when I pull Page of Cups, I usually think of imagination, play, creativity. And so I was like, okay, try to prioritize like unstructured time, try to prioritize play, childlike things maybe. I don't think of the pages as children in general, but I think there's that energy to the Page of Cups. Inner child work. And it was funny because I was like, I'm prioritizing inner child work, and then I realized I don't know what the hell that is. I sort of do, but like I wasn't fully getting like, is Page of Cups inner child, or is Page of Cups more play? Because inner child work is not necessarily playful, and not necessarily imaginative. I actually have started doing parts work with my therapist, and sort of seeing how, like, working with the wounds of your inner child and the way your inner child reacts versus other parts of yourself doesn't feel particularly Page of Cups. So I don't think that was it. I don't think that's why I'm pulling it. Just allowing more play in my life would theoretically be good, but I'm fine. I'm just not, I don't know, I'm not very pulled to it. Like, play feels like homework. Oh, I guess I've got to like put on some music and dance or something. So yeah, I think there's still something there for me to grasp that I'm not quite getting at. Although I do wonder if part of it is the doing what lights me up actually in my work. And maybe play doesn't have to be like I'm doing art or I'm playing the piano or something. Maybe play can also be like, oh, I have this interesting idea about tarot and numbers, and I want to like just fuck with that and maybe not have a specific outcome in mind. It could be it. Keep you updated. If it keeps coming up, then we know that I still don't get it. Thoughts on Page of Cups, leave them below. And then finally, and then we'll jump into some of the different media stuff and tarot decks and everything. I'm a little sad that my fatigue is re-emerging. And I don't yet know why. Because I've definitely had a number of nights where I've slept like 12 hours and still had like a hard time waking up after 12 hours, which was my experience before I sort of figured everything out and realized I have something called idiopathic hypersomnia, which is very easily, but like one of the ways that it's treated is just through sitting up, never lying down during the day. So I'm doing that. I'm still doing that. But yeah, not going quite as well, and so I think it may be food related. I think it may be, so we're trying things, but this is to say, sometimes you think you're fixed disability, and you have not, in fact, permanently fixed it, and that's all right. That is medicine. That is a lesson as well. So, very quickly, I want to tell you about a food haul. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is food. If you're vegan, this is for you. So I had this level of just frustration because we're still not going into grocery stores with the limited number of snacks that are available from the pickup, and I decided that I was just going to see what I randomly could buy on the internet because I wanted snacks one day. So just some quick notes on snacks if you're vegan. Okay, 1, bean fields. You probably know bean fields chips. They're bean-based chips, and they're good. And they have vegan cheddar sour cream, which makes me very happy. I love that flavor. But also, they have these snacklins. Call them snacklins. They're supposed to be like cracklins. They have no relationship to pork cracklins. I have been a person who ate meat very briefly, but I was in the South. I have had pork cracklins. There's no relationship. I don't understand. In fact, I got 2 different kinds of things like that because I was trying to find a snack that wasn't quite chips because I just go through a chip bag really quickly. And there's nothing wrong with that. No value judgment there, but cost-wise and just in general, I would prefer to have snacks that I'm better at just eating some of or eating as much as I want/need. I'm going to check the name of the other one because I thought this might be a solution. They also have more fiber, and as you may know, if you're, aging, fiber is important. So there's that. But the bean fields ones, they're very dense. They have no relationship whatsoever, in my opinion, to cracklins. Though they are a high fiber snack, which is nice, and you can reasonably, a bag is probably 2 servings. And they have all sorts of flavors, including weird ones: hot cocoa, pumpkin pie, dessert deliciousness. So actually, they kind of work if you've got a sweet tooth. But oh my god, my teeth are like, what is going on here? So hard to chew, note. The other one was, I'm like looking at my Amazon right now. I try not to use Amazon a lot, by the way, but imperfect action is good, and sometimes we have to reduce. Snacklins. The other brand is Snacklins. So in contrast, the Snacklins are much lighter. They're airy. They're made from some sort of mushroom. So you'll go through a bag very quickly. They're a decent snack, but let me tell you, the ones that are like Old Bay flavored, not like Old Bay. Do not get them. It's a weird flavor. Consider this a favor from me to you. Probably you would never look this up and you would never buy this thing, but if you were about to, don't buy it. I got Tostones. I got Tostones is not, whatever. I got the bag of like plantain chips that call themselves Tostones. From Goya, and they were fine, and they were pretty good. They were pretty good because I get picky about texture of plantain chips. Pretty good, but I've also been having flare-ups of another condition that I've talked about before on the channel. I have this bladder condition, and it was relieved in a lot of ways by some other things, but I had just weird flare-ups, and so I can't have anything with MSG anymore. Pasokin, Pasokin, these things are so good. They're peanut butter. They're like little logs. I'm sorry I'm not showing any of this, but they're little logs of peanut butter. They have a cinnamon oat flavor. So yummy. And then they're little individual. This is part of what I was trying to do too, is get individual packaged things, which is not great environmentally, but it is what it is. It works a lot better for me in terms of just not eating more than like feels good. Because I don't want to feel like after I eat something. So the Pasokin, really yummy, and you get 2 little logs per box, which admittedly I will totally eat 3 boxes of them, but it's there. They're a little pricey, but it's basically peanut butter with flavoring. What can go wrong? And then, was there anything else I want to comment? Oh, Nature's Heart mixed nuts. I was looking for almond free. If anybody knows almond free mixed nuts, because like almonds, I guess I just suddenly became intolerant to. I tried the Nature's Heart. They're like trail mix basically. Weirdly sweet. Weird sweetener. Don't recommend. Taos Bakes bars. Definitely recommend. I have different opinions about different flavors, but in general, if you want something that's like sweet, like a dessert type thing, and a little snack bar, Taos Bakes, all vegan, really yummy, gluten free. I'm pretty sure they're all gluten free as well. Are really good. I know no one asks for this. Also, Dr. Bonner's, you know, the soap people. I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but the chocolate bars. Also vegan. Okay, I think that's all for vegan snack. Okay, that's your vegan snack recommendations from me to you. Again, no one wanted it. I don't care. There you go. All right, let's get into something that people probably do want, which is tarot decks. Let's talk about tarot decks. How are we doing? Oh, 30 minutes. I'm doing great. Okay, so decks I received. Received a few. I haven't worked with any of these. In fact, two are just in the box, so I'm not even gonna like show them, but I'll kind of show them briefly. So one is the Lan Sky Oracle. This is the same creator, and it goes well with the White Sage Tarot, which I found to be a really good reader for me. It has this kind of airy feel, which I don't have a lot of decks in my collection. So if you're looking for something that's kind of an air feel, I like White Sage, and I like the Fountain Tarot. But this Oracle deck is based on the 8 limbs of yoga. I've had a very like complex relationship with like how I feel about sort of being a white person and being a European descendant person and working with yoga. And, you know, for a while I was like, not at all. I moved around. And I have a little bit, like, I don't actually know anything about this creator's background, right, or ethics. And so I guess, you know, ideally I would have looked into that a little more before buying it. But I thought the treatment of, from what I can tell, not being from the culture, the treatment of this, it's very based on Patanjali's framework, right? And so it comes from a source text. And so I'll be interested to work with it. I have, where I am now with it is that I don't talk a lot about yoga, just because I don't want to like over normalize being like, oh yeah, I do yoga. And not to say that I'm judging you if you talk about your yoga practice and you're white, but just like, I would personally feel like if I'm going to do that, I need to talk equally as much about its origins and its history, and I just don't feel qualified to do so. But having learned a little more about some of the source texts and the intention of accessibility and the intention of sharing it out, I'm a little less restrictive now in how I think about it. And so that was why I hadn't bought this for a while, and I decided that it does look like something I wanted to learn. Of course, absolutely, if you have thoughts on this, perspectives, especially on this particular deck, and you know, you do come from, I'll say one of the origin cultures, because I know that there's Hindu origins, I know there's Indian origins. I don't know if that's actually comprehensively inclusive. I'll leave it at that. I also know that there's a lot of people who develop different yogas and different systems, so it's one of those things. But that's the Lan Sky Oracle. And then I also recently received, I believe this was a Kickstarter, Points of You Oracle, which you're not going to really be able to see it, but there's some of the cards. So I haven't opened it, but I am excited about this one, and I'll certainly show it once we get there. I'm going to try to do more deck reviews. That is a goal. And then this one is the Faux Tarot. Now this is one of those ones where they call it a tarot. It's not really a tarot. It's 31 cards. And it's an oracle deck. I don't know if it was intended, I can't remember if it was intended to map at all. I can kind of see how some of these cards would match the majors, but I don't think it doesn't seem like that was the intention. I was interested in this particularly because I believe the, actually I could probably pull it up, the Kickstarter for this one, it was, you may have seen it, it was very limited actually at first, and I missed the initial. It was like, we're doing 100 decks and that's it. I think it was 100. And after that they added more decks, and so I jumped on it while they were available. Right, it was 100 to start with. And the way it's described is a neurodivergent tarot deck with 31 cards for unusual people, which I love, right? I love that it's neurodivergent. I love that it has this like broader for unusual people. I've been thinking a lot about outsider, like being an outsider, and neurodivergence and queerness and the intersection, and thinking about neuroqueerness, thinking about being an intuitive and how that maps to those things, thinking about, like, if you're familiar with Gloria Anzaldúa and Borderlands, like thinking about that concept in relationship to these things. All of that is very inspiring to me, especially as we think about ways of being that are outside of the normative culture, right? And so this thing seemed like a really great thing to do, thing to back. And I took a little flip through. This is part of why I don't just like open up the decks and show you all the cards, because I don't like to look at the cards before I do my first reading. But I did a little peek at it. And so you threw them all on the floor. That's gonna become like, this should be a drinking game. Like, how many decks in a YouTube video can Avery throw on the floor? You may or may not know that one of my key tarot beliefs is that there's no such thing as a bad shuffle, and if I throw them on the floor, it means that they need to be mixed up a little bit more. So there you go. You can reframe anything. So not in order anymore, but so yeah, you have fairly sort of everyday objects or symbols, the tattoo, and then there's generally a few keywords below. There's no guidebook. I don't think there's no guidebook. It came in a little bag. So some of them, like the third eye that I just showed you, are more sort of like quote unquote spiritual in origin. And it's like the neurodivergence of the deck is like a little less obviously clear, although the creator says, and I'll just read from the Kickstarter page, you know, one of the so it started from a whole sort of rabbit hole, which I love, right? A deck that came from a rabbit hole. And it actually, the story is that they were doing like challenges. They were doing challenges around incorporating mental health and neurodiversity. And they do comic challenges, and they were kind of uninspired by the prompt list and all the different challenges that were copycatting it. And so what they did is they pulled out their tarot deck, a tarot deck, and did a reading. And what they interpreted that reading to mean is to do the challenge, but to swap out prompt words from other challenges, and then just add the word "the" before the thing. So like the scarecrow, for example, and draw that word as if it were one of the major arcana. And so they did that challenge, and then they say that one of the superpowers of neurodivergence is, in parentheses, over researching. And so they got all into these words and like looking at mythological, historical, literary references, and then tried to distill everything down. And I thought that was so cool. And so it's not like it's exactly like neurodivergence in the deck, but you definitely find things that would be relevant to neurodivergent experience. I freaking love it. There's an octopus card. Regeneration, renewal, resourceful in a pickle. Oh my god. Okay, this is great because it's not mine, it's upstairs partners, but they have a cat who is orange. His name is Captain Asshole. It's appropriate. We call him the Floof. And so, look at this one. The fuzzy cat. Ineffable fluff. Engage in rapt contemplation. I can't wait to show that to my partners. They're going to lose it. I would bring Captain Asshole down to like hold him up next to the card, but we're not getting cat hair in my apartment. There's the ding. Ding. I hope you all appreciate that I will never remember to turn off the ding, and that's just how it is. So some of these could be really relevant to mental health stuff. I think would be a good deck for that. Although some of them might be a little harsh depending on what you're going through. So like this one, the inner demons, thoughts, feelings, beliefs. They're on your side, but it's inside with the parentheses. So I think that's an interesting little play. They're on your side, they're on your inside. And then it's just, hey. So yeah, it's just an irreverent little deck. I'm really excited to work with it. Decks I have been working with next. Honestly, mostly just the one. Yeah, mostly just the one. Yes. I've had the Lilifer out. I can't remember if I've shown this in a previous one. I may have actually shown it as a haul because it was recent. Immediate, like, soul connection, friend. Like, I was like, oh. And like often is the case with kind of soul decks, didn't expect that in advance. It's the same person who did, I think it's Marianne Constantine, did the Reclaim Oracle. If you've seen that one, the black and pink Oracle. This one. Same creator. So I love the color combo, which is why I got that, and then the sort of abundant bodies. And this one is kind of a rainbow color scheme. It's apparently based on Tarot de Marseille, which I didn't realize because it's not pips. Like there are figures in the, but it's actually more inspired by the Marseille than RWS. It just speaks to me. It's one of those ones that I can't tell you. It's just personal. Like it's very clear when I pull things. And I like that it's got a lot of symbols and there's a guide to that. And so the only thing about this to be aware of is that the numbers are not always clear what number it is. Like, what number is that? I don't know. I think there's some esoteric correspondence. And again, there is a little guide to it, but it does mean that sometimes you have to be like, I'm just going to count the swords in this picture. So apparently that is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. And then it has glyphs for the astrology, which I really like, or elemental glyphs if it's quartz. But in general, it's blob people. So show you some of these blob people. A lot of the cards, like this is an example, go together in a really beautiful way. So when I put this one next to, there's another one that has some of the same, like this bird and the snakes are like all throughout. You could see the relationship between the two in a really amazing way. God, I keep pulling this and I'm just like, all right, look at the star, the majors. The majors. I don't know if you can see that, but it says I know above the third eye. And like the protection, it's like I'm protecting my intuition. Like people can tell me something's not going to work. I don't care. But also the healing of the star. So I love the majors. And then just the blob people, I have never seen my own gender so represented in a deck or art or anything in my entire life. So if you wonder what my gender is, it's this. It's these blob people, collectively, all of them at once. And like, you know, some of them are more obviously lighthearted or darker. So it's a good mix of like light and shadow. Which I don't even think of that as a binary, but there you go. And then these recurring characters, like you have this wolf throughout, you have snakes throughout, you have plants. Let me show you some of the majors. Yeah, like these majors are just, they're so evocative and creative. Oh, I pulled this one today. And like I pulled this reverse, for example. Here's the Two of Wands. And I find the reversals it's like so dynamic that I really feel a different meaning in those hands reaching down and those snakes reaching down to the sun and the moon. So definitely recommend for astrology people because there's a lot of astrology symbols. Here's the Tower. Trying to find some of my favorites real fast. Oh, I love that the world is there's a lot of spiral imagery in this deck. So if you're like me, really into like spiral time and spiralic living, you will appreciate that. I'm trying to find the magician. Deck's like, okay, sure. Here you go. This magician. So look at the hands. And you see how one of the blue hands, it's like it's kind of solar plexus area, the roots of the flowers growing out. You have another hand up to the sky, very magician, right? And you have the red hands. There's kind of like, it's like they're nurturing or they're like feeding the plants with the fire. And it's like the snakes are the fire. Okay. This whole thing at the Lilifer is just me making that face. Like, this high priestess, though. Anyway, okay, don't show all the cards in the deck, Avery. There's also 2 extra cards in this one, and they are Lilith, and there's Lilith, and Lucifer. Which is personally very meaningful to me. Although, I just recently read a critique, so I say it's meaningful to me now, but I'm reconsidering and questioning and want to learn more. I did see a recent critique suggesting that, not recent, I recently saw it, suggesting that Lilith specifically, that non-Jews should not be using Lilith in their practice. And specifically that, like, taking on Lilith as a kind of, like, one of the ways that Lilith is thought of, like, thinking of her as, like, a goddess or a kind of, like, sexual figure, sexuality-based figure, and thinking of her as, like, a positive or healing force as opposed to a demon is non-respectful of Jewish practice and Jewish tradition. And I've read that one opinion and haven't gone further into it, to be honest. So I'm just, like, acknowledging that may change. My working with Lilith may change, because I want to learn more about that and I want to be respectful. But yeah, I'm very early in learning about that. Okay, so quickly media. I'll just like breeze through. One thing I noticed when I was a kid, I don't know if anybody else did this, but I would have what I thought were crushes on actors, and now I've sort of realized my own spectrum identity. That it's not exactly like my celebrity crushes were never really like crushes in the sense of like I want to date or do sexy things with you, but they were kind of like hyperfixation fascinations. And I'm really into the MCU, you may know, Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I write fanfic, I read fanfic, and I'm not like that necessarily into the actors just as actors, or like as celebrity figures, I guess I should say. And also, a couple of the actors from that franchise, I'm really like, yeah, I find their work interesting. And so I'm doing kind of what I used to do when I was younger, where it would be like, I like Brad Pitt now. I'm going to watch every Brad Pitt movie, except with MCU actors, but much more discerning. Not everyone. So you'll notice some recurrence of Sebastian Stan, who is Bucky, Winter Soldier in MCU, and Chris Evans, who is Captain America, Steve Rogers in the MCU. So Pam and Tommy, I think I mentioned I'm still watching it. I'm not done. But I may have mentioned that in the February one. But I was really enjoying that series. I had to take a break because some of the feminist stuff or some of the just like sexist stuff against Pam Anderson, I was like, I don't want to watch this. This is making me, my like intuitive sense is like, cringe. But it's a really interesting take. Like if you were around in that time, if you remember Pam and Tommy, which like I was a kid, but I do remember it. It's fictionalized, right? They don't actually know how the sex tape was, how it was stolen or anything about who stole it or how it became distributed. So that's all fictionalized. But the relationship, like the way the actors play the relationship is really like charming and interesting, and I don't know. And it's one of these series where it's short enough to be good for my attention span, and then it takes kind of different perspectives, and I always really like that. So still watching that. The other Sebastian Stan thing is I watched Fresh, which is a movie that I didn't know anything about. I saw an interview with him talking about it and talking about this psychopath and like this like relatable psychopath and like the kind of like meta of that and the way we like people get interested in serial killer narratives and stuff. And that was never me, but it was enough to make me curious about the movie. So I watched the movie, and I won't give anything away, but I didn't know what kind of movie it was, and I'm not a fan of horror or like thrillers or anything. And it's one of these where you have somebody, even through like violence and the shitty bit, you have this like charming psychopath figure, which is problematic in and of itself, right? But like, I know that. It's really beautifully shot. So I'm watching it like, I'm fine. There haven't been any gore. There haven't been anything. I won't tell you. I'll just say that if you're not into gore and if you're not into like surprise things, be cautious. If you like, maybe don't watch this movie. It's on Hulu. I don't know if it's popular, if anybody's gonna watch it, but I'm just giving you that warning just in case. I did not watch the last like 5 minutes. When we got there, I just went, nope, don't care how it ends. So I don't know how it ends, but I don't care how it ends. And then the Chris Evans one was Defending Jacob, which I wasn't sure. I was like, is this worth it? Like, again, not into crime dramas generally. But I did decide to watch it. He was very good in it. And the cast in general was a good cast. And I don't know if I would recommend that. It ends, but there's gonna be a second season as well. And this was part of my Apple TV, like watch all the things before the trial ends. So I definitely wouldn't say like get Apple TV for that, but you know, it was a compelling character drama. I'll put it that way. There's other things on Apple TV if you have that, or if you have the trial and you're like, what should I be watching on Apple TV? Like, I'll tell you, it's not probably worth paying for. The overall number of things, at least for me, was not worth paying for. Although there were some things I was curious about, namely Pachinko, but I didn't watch Pachinko because I'm so in love with that novel that I couldn't do it. I don't know if you ever had this, but like sometimes it's just the book is too good, and I'm like, I just want it to be the way it is in my head. So I bet it's great, but I just decided it's the book for me. It's just the book. What I did watch, The Problem with Jon Stewart. So Jon Stewart now has a show on Apple TV where he talks about various things like topics like racism or the media. And you know, it's some of it's Daily Show-esque, some of it's more like there's a serious interview panel at the end of every one. They do a little thing with the writer's room at the beginning and the end. And honestly, I wish we could just have a show of the writer's room because that writer's room is hilarious. And then the other thing I watched on Apple was, I like nature documentaries, and there's this series called Night on Earth in Color. And basically there's a new camera that allows them to film full color at night to make night look like day. And I would say there's some really adorable, and also like it's very like nature documentary, like following the family of the lions or whatever. But it was really, really cool nature show. But it was narrated by Tom Hiddleston, and they are very self-congratulatory about those damn cameras, though. It's like every 5 seconds, like the new technology. So I don't know. That's so that was my Apple. Oh, the one other thing I watched on Apple was Roar, which is a feminist. It's a series of feminist shorts, and they have really famous actors. And I only watched 3 or 4 of them. They're very weird. Some of them are very weird, and they're very like on the nose. So I think if you are already a feminist person and you're familiar with these issues, you know, there's funny moments, there's interesting moments, but a lot of it is just kind of like, yeah, okay, we get it. Like, I knew that already. So it's got Issa Rae, it's got Nicole Kidman, but I didn't find it that great. And then finally, the last couple things. I don't want to talk about the end of The Bachelor. I may be done with The Bachelor. That's all I'm going to say about The Bachelor. I thought it would be I was watching a nature documentary, like the mating habits of heteronormative people, and it's just too sad. The level of just horridness of human beings in that show is really bad. I know, shocking no one. And then finally, speaking of the MCU, we watched a couple of episodes of Moon Knight, which is the most recent TV show on Marvel, Disney Plus. And I would say it's really good if you like that kind of thing. It wasn't... I don't normally give up on MCU, and I may come back to it, but for now I'm not watching it. But I would say if you like a really quirky, character-driven, but mostly couple care, like a small ensemble, really quirky, kind of brainy, and very funny, but in that, I don't even know how to describe it, so I won't try, in a particular way. I found a lot of it a little bit on the nose, where it's oh yeah, ancient Egypt, blah, blah, blah. But that's also Marvel Comics, so I'm not going to blame them. I really like, there's one I'll just say the wife. I hate saying the wife, but you'll know who that is if you watch it. She's fantastic, but not enough for me to watch the whole thing. And then finally, I'm just going to say that books, I think last time I was I might separate this out, and I'm really trying to figure out, because I know people say they really like my book reviews, and I put them on Goodreads, I tweet them, and then I end up talking about the same books here, and I don't know the best home for book reviews for me, because I think, I know BookTube is a big thing. I know nonfiction is not very well represented at all on BookTube. I used to think oh, there's a thing I could do that people aren't really doing. But I don't know if anybody would watch that, because they may just only be interested in fiction. Or I don't know if the BookTube people would watch that. I don't know if anyone wants summaries of nonfiction books. Again, we're going back to trying to predict what other people think. Never works. More to the point, I've also thought about book blogging, and whether to have a blog, period, whether to have books on a blog, and then whether to have separate blogs. All that is to say, I don't even know if talking about books more would bring people into interest in what I do, and all the blah blah blah. Point is, I like reading, so I'm gonna keep doing that. So if people want to learn about books, I just don't know. Maybe I'll separate them out, but maybe it'll just keep showing up here. Let me know what you think. I've read a lot, so I'm not going to try to go through them all, but I'll just say that one of the best ones was a memoir called 1,000 Ways to Pay Attention. It's by Rebecca Schiller. It just came out. Really recommend if you're ADHD, especially if you're adult diagnosed or you're not sure, especially if you're a woman or non-binary, and especially if you're interested in spiritual shit, mindfulness, and also justice. I mean, honestly, the things I'm interested in, right? It's a really compelling, it's the experience of being inside an ADHD brain, the experience of not knowing what's going on, not having a diagnosis yet, and it just so beautiful. It so captures that internal experience. I sent it to my mother right away, because I think it's also a good book to send to people, to be this is what it's like. And it's told mostly through the story of the year before she realized that it was ADHD, on a small holding in England, where she's learning to work on the land. She's asking questions about what does it mean to be a European descended person who owns property, everything that's tangled up in that, everything that's tangled up in the clearing of old forests in England. And there are these kind of dream sequences where she interacts with people from the past. And I honestly don't know, like, it's never clear, right? I think intentionally, whether those were like experiences she had, right? Clairvoyant type experiences, or is it artistic license? Is it, you know, but so it really blends like layers of reality and you know, what is reality, what is past, present, future, what is big and small, and just the way that the ADHD brain can operate in so many scopes and then have trouble existing in capitalism, which is, spoiler alert, basically the conclusion. Really, really good. I would say read that. But yeah, I like read some other stuff on the same theme that would touch from different angles on the brain. So like mind wandering was a really interesting kind of like survey of neuroscience, but then looking at mindfulness and the interaction between the two. Really comprehensive, looking at kind of what the brain does when it's not focusing on a task. I read Abundance by Deepak Chopra. You know, decent, like, decent, but mostly about the chakra system and abundance. It's like, it's not material wealth, but then you're talking about getting money a lot. So, I read a book called The Zen of Therapy that I would also really highly recommend if you're curious. I did notice the other reviewers that, like, if you're really familiar with Buddhism and Zen Buddhism specifically, like, you may not like this as much, right? Like, not, I don't think it was necessarily saying that he got it wrong. I think it was more just like, I didn't learn anything new kind of critiques. But it's a therapist thinking about the intersection, or like comparing kind of a mindful approach to like a psychodynamic therapy approach, which is of course only one kind of therapy. But it really made me think about like the value of analyzing past experience versus just living in the now, and those approaches to the self. It was pretty interesting. You know, I read a few different books that came out from Llewellyn that were kind of, so I'm not going to share their names. The last couple, I'm reading fewer and fewer of the like justice-oriented books because I'm just finding that often I've sort of, they're citing the people I've already read, so I'm like, oh wait, I already know this. But a couple I did check out. One is called Queer Body Power, and that one is... I don't know how it will hit different people, to be honest, but it is looking at the body, and in particular body positivity and like the fat acceptance movement and living with eating disorders. That comes up a lot in a queer context, but then also some other things about the body, you know, experiences of everything from like body hair to tattooing to there's a lot of things around like gendered beauty standards, expectations. I think it would be a really good book for non-queer person to like learn about the experience. And then for queer people, I think you'll definitely see yourself reflected and be like, ooh, but at the same time, I don't know if it would be anything new. Like my experience was, I don't feel like I learned a lot, but I'm glad this book existed. And then there were several times that made me go, aha, like, yes, I relate to that. And then finally, read a book called Asada Taught Me, which is, it's a little like, so it's written by a historian, and most of the book is a collection of previously published essays, and so they're history, and they're talking about various bits of, you know, Black Power, the Black Panther Party history, but what I found useful is that, so the final essay is a retrospective on 2020 and on everything that happened in racial justice in 2020, and it covers, like, that essay is kind of looking at the continuity between Black Power and then today's movements, the movement for Black Lives and Black Lives Matter, and then also does a really great job of like also looking at like grassroots and smaller organizations and how they sometimes get left out of the story. But then, so it all kind of leads up, that's the original essay that was for the book, the rest of it's pre-published, And what it does is like each essay is looking at something specific, but the selection of essays gives you a nice continuity between like what is the actual history of the Black Panther Party, what, and then what other factors are like contributing to that, and then the intervening period is covered really well, and so you get a sense of like what is the contribution of all the crap happening in the 80s and 90s, especially, you know, the legacy of the Clintons, the like the Bush years, other Bush, well, both I guess, but I mean there is kind of a like look at the going from the war on drugs and the war on terror and like how these things all intersect, prison industrial complex, etc. A lot on Reagan, Reagan era, that I think will help, especially if you didn't live through it or aren't familiar with it. And like I lived through parts of it and we're familiar with parts of it, but it helps to kind of see how we got to where we are, and then what is similar and what is different, and where there's continuity, because history so often tries to erase continuity between these movements. So I would say that's a good one. There's a little bit of repetition between some of the essays because they are pre-published, and so it's not like the whole thing was written as one piece, but not enough to be annoying. And a lot of interesting local context, mostly for the historical stuff, mostly New York and California, Oakland and LA, but I always enjoy like hyper local stories and learning from that local perspective. So if that is you as well, then I would recommend. Okay, let me know what you think about books. Let me know in general. Do you enjoy these? An hour. I didn't go that much shorter. Well, I did the first section shorter. Yeah, let me know what you think. And hey, look, it's like you can tell what month it is by what level of ridiculousness. I, by the way, hate a middle part, but my hair won't stay out of the middle. I could like try to cut some sort of shape, but I don't even know. I'm just growing it out. It's living into my irreverent, approaching middle-aged witchy self, and that's just how we're gonna be. Hope you like it. As a reminder, newsletter below, Patreon below, and I'll see you in the next video.